Hello, today we are looking at Edward Lee. Edward Lee is written as a jazz piece. There's a lot of music theory here that at first glance this appears to be in the key of G. Well, it's in the key of E. It's actually in the key of E minor, but E minor is the relative minor scale that goes with G. So the notes and the chords would be the same. If we're looking at the possibility of improvisation, you want to go back and forth between their useful scales. That doesn't mean you have to use them, but useful, you need to understand how they go with the piece. So their suggestion for E minor is an E blues scale. Well, you could also use the G scale, maybe starting on E, might have more interesting sound. So working just off of the G scale, but in the key of E minor. You could just use the scale of G. As we go down the line, then we're on the first line, and we get to the A chord, your A chord would be, and I don't see it listed on your useful scales, but the A chord is the fifth chord of the key that it comes from, because it's a seventh chord, dominant seventh, not major, which would mean that the A chord comes from the key of D. The key of D has two sharps in it. I think I mentioned last time that one thing you could do is avoid the C sharp, and you'd still be playing in the key of G. So if for that whole first line, you could just use the key of G and avoid the C sharp in that final measure if you're improvising. And we go on to the second line. Well, in the second line, they throw you kind of a curveball. They throw you a B seventh chord. I'm just going to throw this out. That B seventh chord could be from an E harmonic minor scale, which could also go with the E minor chord. And we're not going to worry about that right now. But I want you to keep it in your mind, because I see some issues that would apply to the harmonic scales in this song, and you have enough to deal with right now. But you may hear that word later. The suggestion for starting off in this complicated music theory ideas of jazz is to use your B Mixolydian scale. Mixolydian for B, and there's for B seventh, which just means that Mixolydian is the fifth mode of any scale, and it means that B seventh is the fifth chord of the key that it comes from. So if you're looking at B seventh, it would actually come out of the scale of E. The scale of E would have four sharps: F sharp, G sharp, C sharp, D sharp, E. So it would be F sharp and G sharp and C sharp and D sharp. In order, they would be F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp would be the last sharp. So that you would get those four sharps in the scale of that would go with the B seventh chord. And of course, if you look at it, you do see those four sharps. And E minor, I'd go back to the scale of G. That C major seventh could be the fourth chord in the scale of G. And if you look at their suggestion for C major seventh, they're suggesting that that chord go with the scale that it would originally come from, which would be the C major scale. I'm just going to throw this out there. If you look at the chord for C major seventh, it could be in the key of G, but the F would be sharp because it's the major seventh. Major chords can go to two scales. They can go to their home scale or the scale of their name. So G major seventh would be from G. G major seventh could also be from the key of D. There are always two scales that will go with any major chord. So it's sometimes difficult to place them. If you look where are we? Oh, okay, so we're back to that's C major 7. I would continue to use G there, and I would frankly use G for the whole first line, keeping in mind that on that A7th chord, you want to avoid the C in that when you're improvising there, because you're going to be using an A7th chord. If you don't want to have to think about that C being sharp, it would be sharp in your left hand, but just avoid playing C and you're going to be all set. When you go into the B7th, you might use what's already there. That would give you a choice. Or something off of the chord. So you just use notes from the chord. And your last choice would be to actually use the idea that it's a Mixolydian scale from the key of E. So if you're in the key of E, starting from B, and I always have a little trouble here, but then you would get those notes. My suggestion there is stick to the notes from the chord. It's going to make it a lot easier. And let's start taking a look at the bridge. When you get into the bridge, the key is moving around there. Here you have your first chord is G7th. G7th is your Mixolydian mode. It is the 5th chord, which is Mixolydian. You say Ionian, Dorian, the word I can't pronounce, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian is your 5th mode, Mixolydian. So they'll often say it's the Mixolydian chord from the key of G, and so that's all, or I'm sorry, from the key, we're in G7th, from the key of C. And it just means it's the 5th chord, C, 5th chord. So that G7th and C major 7, you could pair those together. That's just out of the key of C. And if you look at, I don't know if yes, they did include C major. So if you look at your suggested scales, you have the C major scale and the G major scale. And if you look at your book, my paper's a little unclear because it's so dark I had to lighten it up, a little hard to see. Okay. So now we're on the E chord. The E7th chord is the 5th chord, again, of the key that it comes from. So it becomes the Mixolydian of the key of A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3 sharps, C sharp. Let's start with F. First sharp, F, C, G. Those 3 sharps are in the key of A. So it's a lot of information, but it's information that you need to have. I think you probably ought to listen to this video, but I would keep stopping it. So when we get done with the A part, go work on the A part. So now we're in the B part, and we're looking at E7th and A major 7. So again, E is from the key of A, and A is from the key of A. Get into the chord D7. D7, I want to go back and talk about, let's go back to the very beginning of B. G7, C, the relationship there is the 5 chord and the 1 chord. E7 to A, the relationship there is E is the 5 chord, A is the 1 chord. We go to the D, D again is the 5 chord, G major is the 1 chord. So you can put those things together with the key that they're from. D and G, D7th and G major 7th are related in that way that they are both from the key of G. So D7, and if we look at their suggested ideas, D7th is your Mixolydian chord, or your 5th chord, from the key it comes from, which is G major, and I don't know if they have G major in here. Yeah, I don't see it. So G major is just the major scale. 1 sharp. So from D to G, you're going to have 1 sharp, and that is F. And again, they are starting at the beginning of B. The G7th and the C, the relationship is the 5 chord and the 1 chord. E to A, the relationship is the 5 chord and the 1 chord. D to G, the relationship is the 5 chord and the 1 chord. And we're going to get off of that line. And we're going to look at C7 sus. C7 sus is, what they give as a choice there. C7 sus, well, there's your C7 chord, and there's your melody tone, which is F. That melody tone makes it sus. If we look at the 3, 1, 2, 3, the third note, if you raise the third note up to the next note in the scale, you get to F. And that is what makes it sus. The theory was at one time leave the E out and switch it for F. Today we know that we can use the third and the sus note separated. They're usually separated. If you put them together, you're going to get something a little strange, right? That C7th chord likely comes from the key of F, where the B would be flat, and that would be the only flat note. Again, you could just use what's there. The most important relationships in this B part are that 1-5, 1-5, 1-5 relationship of the chords. C7 sus is from the key of F. If we go into B, and I haven't checked, but that could be a tritone substitution, and I'm not going to guess there. I'm not sure. But that is a word you're going to hear again, tritone substitution, and I'd have to check and see if it is. So if we're looking at the B chord, B7th is also the 5th chord of the key it comes from, and we talked about that a little bit in the top and said that that would be from the key of B7 is from the key of E. And if you look at their choice, B7th, which is Mixolydian, which is again listed, it's one of the suggested scales, there are 4 sharps there. My suggestion with the B chords in this song is because they're so kind of out there that when you come to a B chord, I do scale tones or even the tones that are written there for improvisation. And that pretty much ends what we're talking about. When you go into the very last line here, there's a little transition that's pretty quick. If you look at the very last line that goes, I'm going to think that it goes back to the beginning, I'm pretty sure. And that's just a turnaround bringing you back to the beginning of the song. So I'd give this a try. I think I'd been suggesting that you just fool around with this, and I would just fool around with this for a while, trying to keep those things in your mind, though, that we've talked about. You're not going to get a final product. The final product needs to be written down for some time, and then someday it gets a little better. Thank you. Bye-bye.